Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. As requested, I am now looking at the next chapter of Pathfinder's quest. We're on chapter 4, Identity Theft. I feel like this chapter is a bit of a filler, and it kind of links Apex to Titanfall, but we'll go through it all together. I also want to add, please watch the previous episode as these two chapters connect to each other. If you didn't know, years ago, Wraith woke up in an IMC detention facility for the mentally ill with no memories of who she is and what happened exactly to her, and she could hear a voice whispering to her that kept her awake for days. After a while, she began to listen to the voice, which helped her learn the powers that she has and helped her escape the facility itself. While trying to find out who she was, she came across a lot of information, most of it to do with the Ares division. At the time, it was based around planet Typhon, which is Wraith's home planet. And the Ares division was set up to inspect and look at what artifacts were and what they could do with them. And they created something called a fold weapon. It was built originally to create life, but in the wrong hands it could, be turned to the complete opposite and be for bad, as it were. It needed a key known as the Arc, and the Arc was powerful enough to warp time and matter. It needed protecting while it was being transported from its original dig site to the fold weapon, wherever that was stationed, and they had actually employed some apex predators. One of them was Cuban Blisk. So it turns out the general that was in charge of the fold weapon had actually planned to destroy the planet Harmony, but was stopped by a couple of titans that we may know, Jack Cooper and BT, who together stopped the general, and the rumour around it was that Blisk had actually stepped aside to let them do this. One note that is put aside on this is that subsequently the general ended up blowing up Typhon, and this led to Pathfinder losing his job as a weatherman. After the explosion, the militia had recorded the deaths of apex predators that were involved, who had sadly died. We've got Kane Richter, Sloane, Viper, and Ash. It doesn't say exactly what version of Ash this is. It just had in brackets Blisk's version. We've also got some other casualties. I don't know how significant they're going to be to the game, but I thought it might be worth mentioning anyway. We've got Dr. Jefferson Boyle. It says here that Race doesn't know who this is. And BT7274, and they both sacrificed themselves for many. Some of the Arc powers was then moved to the Ares division in the Outlands, and Wraith reckons that her powers are connected to this Arc. Just as a side note, I thought it was really sweet. While they were talking, Wraith called Pathfinder her friend and said it was quite hard for her to trust people, but in every dimension that she's been in, Pathfinder is always Pathfinder. He's always the same, and he's always looking to find who he is and where he came from. So what we have learnt about Wraith through different sections of the game, through lore, that Wraith is called Renee Blasey, and she was a science pilot for the IMC, and was experimenting with phase jumping technology with Dr. Singh. When they couldn't get a volunteer, Wraith volunteered herself, and the experiment didn't go to plan. She lost her memory, and Singh covered it up, locked her up as a Jane Doe to continue his experiments. Now, this is why I said that the two chapters connect. So, while talking to Pathfinder, Wraith turns around and says she would have had 2 full days to explore the labs if it wasn't if it wasn't for the kid. So the kid is Watson, and this is obviously referring back to the previous chapter. We were talking about the story of the ghost and what Watson saw in the labs. If you remember the voice lines between Watson and Rafe, they were talking about what she saw as a child in the labs, and also going back to her being a science pilot. This is why she wants to help Bangalore find out about her knife and find out about her brother, because she knows she was a science pilot and it's a pilot's knife. I believe it has some sort of memory capability on the knife, so she was thinking she could like hack the password and find out what was on it for Bangalore. So going back to Wraith being in the labs, so she's kept a log of the whole time she was there. So to begin with, she says she's in her new home. It looks like her old one, except Singh's not there. It looks abandoned apart from a banner that welcomes you to the future home of the Apex Games. And she hasn't heard any voices yet. Day 3, she ventures out as far as she can go. And she's come to the conclusion that she's on an island. In her world, her version, it's actually a peninsula, but the piece of land that connects it to the mainland was actually built by the IMC. So for whatever reason, in our version of Kings Canyon, it's not there. Day 4, she says she's had an eventful day. In an attempt to hear her voices, she climbed to the top of the canyon and, wondered if putting herself in danger they would say something. But as she felt the rocks under her feet begin to crumble and her weight shifted, she heard a voice. And it was a man's voice, so it wasn't the ones in her head. And it was shouting Natalie. And she was that startled, she didn't hear the voice say, "Careful of the rocks." Before they crumbled under her feet, she opened a portal and managed to reappear at the bottom of the canyon with only minor injuries. She doesn't know if the man had actually seen her or recognized her, and he had only shouted Natalie, so at this point she's assuming she is Natalie. And then it's funny because the name of the log changes from Jane Doe to Natalie Doe, because at this point she's assuming she's Natalie. She said she's now a hunter now. She does not wish her prey dead. She's determined to learn everything she can about the man who lives here. So obviously Watson's dad. She doesn't know his name, just that he's an older gentleman, maybe in his 50s, although he could be older. He appears to be some sort of an electrician, and most of the time she can hear him talking to himself or the robots who help him with his work. The voices still haven't told her anything, hasn't really spoken since she tried to make them speak, as it were. So she doesn't believe she's in danger. She doesn't believe that the man that she has found is dangerous in any way. And she plans to sneak into his house tomorrow night when he goes to feed the flyers to see if she can find out more about him. And then the log name changes again to Natalie Paquette, who obviously we know now is Watson. However, at this time, Rafe doesn't really know what's going on, and she believes that she is Natalie Paquette. And she's trying to process what had happened during the day, so the man left to feed the flyers, and she snuck into the house. And she found a wedding ring, and it seemed to fit her. And the piece of paper that was with the ring says, "My wonderful Luke Paquette. I love you, your ecstatic wife." Obviously an electric pun. And she sees the other side of the bed. It's covered in work materials and blueprints, and believes that maybe she was Luke's wife, and obviously because of what happened to her, she had gone missing. So from there, it all goes a bit weird and a bit, I don't know, just a bit weird. So she believes she's now Natalie, and she was married to Luke. and she believes that there's a kid in the woods that is tormenting Luke, and that this kid is his enemy, because he, where is it? Basically shouts into the wood saying, "Laugh all you want, I'll find you, then you'll get what's coming to you." Because he hears Natalie, the real Natalie, laughing. So yeah, he shouts that to her, but Grace doesn't obviously understand the situation. She sees it differently and says that this is his mortal enemy and she must find them and vanquish them. So then she says, day 8, she saw her, it's a young girl, and there were young girls like her in Singh's care as well. And she knows that this kid was saying that she was looking for the bubble shields, which obviously we know from the last chapter, and fill the space between it with something called ADS light waves, which expand that space by shrinking the inner dome and kill every living thing on the island. So Wraith takes this as her saying she's going to murder Luke, which obviously we know isn't the plan. She was probably just explaining why they couldn't do some of the other plans that they had. Yeah, it's a long story for sure. And then day 9, the girl comes back and Wraith says she's ready for her. She stole the bubble shields, and then that's when Wraith popped out of her portal and told her to leave. So Watson screamed out and ran. Wraith found this hilarious. But then she stood by the exit to catch her breath, so Wraith popped out another portal next to her and screamed in her face, which made her cry. And Wraith says to herself, threaten my husband, that'll teach you. And yeah, obviously Watson runs off. And this is about the fire. So Wraith ended up opening a portal because she was going to go and turn off her machine, Watson's machine that she was working on. By the time she got there, the moron had set the forest on fire. She had passed out from the smoke and was inches away from death when she stepped out of the portal. So she says, what kind of assassin was this? The bad kind, that's what. So Wraith picked up Watson and checked her breathing, and it was shallow. She says, good, serves her right for trying to kill the love of my life. And Wraith takes Watson back through the void and to her front door. And Luke appeared at the doorway shaken, saying Natalie, and Wraith replies saying, yes, I am your Natalie. I did not abandon you. I travelled from another dimension, where I was held captive by a mad scientist, until my other self saved me, and I saved you from this assassin who was going to kill you with her heat ray. Sorry, I find that so funny. And after this happens, Luke basically turns around and says, like, no, this is Natalie. You're not Natalie. I don't know who you are. So Wraith goes off ashamed and she goes back down to the labs, and Luke goes down there and says, you don't have to come out. I don't expect you to, but Natalie believes you're a ghost. I'm going to get the robots to cover this place up. So you either suffocate and die down here on your own, or this is your only chance as you save Natalie. I'm going to put a boat down by the landing docks and turn off the whirlpools, and you can leave and go back to Solas. So this is what she does. She gets out there as quick as she can and goes back to Solas. Just before I leave this, There is also, right at the end, Wraith finally finds a file which connects Amelie Paquette to Project Iris. Now, if you remember, on Olympus there is a Marvin that has a voice line which talks about Project Iris, and this is Amelie talking. But also on the file it says something about the Adonis Squad. Now, although this squad is over 80 years old, just like most military, they keep the same names for factions, and this was actually Bangalore's squad. So next chapter will be Bangalore. Let me know what you guys think, and I hope you've learnt something. As always, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.